Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of the Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show, we'll revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Ike Eisenmann and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. I'm one of your hosts, Jonathan Rosen, along with my co-host, the man who makes me refer to him as Mr. Eisenmann when we're not recording, Ike Eisenmann.
Oh, you can refer to me as Mr. Eisenmann on the show too. That wouldn't bother me one bit.
So how are you today?
I'm doing great. I am so happy to be here. Thanks for having me on the show. This is going to be fun.
Well, I'm excited about this one. Okay, so on social media, every time you post anything about Fantastic Journey, which starred you, the great Roddy McDowell, Carl Franklin, Jared Martin, and Katie Saylor, but every time that you post anything about Fantastic Journey related, everyone goes crazy. We have been getting so many requests to do a show on that. And the thing is, when I first met you, and I've told you this, I knew you from Witch Mountain and Star Trek. Okay, I did not know anything about Fantastic Journey. I've explained to you that I was really just a little kid at the time, and I say that because I want to have known that I'm younger than you. But I wasn't aware of the show because I basically watched what my parents watched. Unless I somehow discovered it, reading through the TV guide on my own or something, which I read through TV guide as a ritual, but I don't know how this show passed me when I was a kid. And I'm upset because it is so something that I would have loved back then. So,
well, no, I mean, yeah, I can tell you the very reason why I probably missed you completely is because first of all, it was a mid-season replacement for NBC, and it never had a chance to get a following. I mean, it after the first two episodes, it already started to stagger in the way the shows were scheduled. And I'm not exact. I should have, part of my own homework should have been making a list of the dates that the shows aired, because it would be like two shows, and then the next week it would be preempted by a sporting
event.
That's
what I read, exactly. Was that driving you guys crazy? I mean,
we will, because because even I noticed there's someone who I just want to give a shout out to, because I think he does awesome tweets. Mr. Silver Age TV, it's at Mr. Silver Age TV on Twitter, and he posts so much stuff about classic television, and he's been posting, on this date, tweets about the Fantastic Journey episodes when they've aired with the promos. I mean, it's great stuff. And I just noticed I think it was last week was the 9th episode. And then the 10th episode, I ended up looking it up, didn't air until June. I mean, it was right. Like, if that's correct, it was like 2 months in between the last two episodes. So it basically just got peppered in wherever NBC had an open time frame to just go ahead and exhibit whatever they had already produced. So it had an unfair beginning in many ways, which we'll get into, and just didn't have a chance to catch on with people but even in those days when there's only 3 channels, 3 networks running, they were competing heavily for audiences because you could only watch one thing at a time. So if you're watching one network, you were not watching the other 2. And if you weren't really consistent about making sure the audience had a chance to see a show and know that it was on, they'll forget about it really fast. And I think that's a lot of what happened.
What you said, I've explained to my kids that, again, you just mentioned the 3 network thing, that these were the choices. That was it. You can't, no streaming, no other channels, no cable.
Well, I mean, I will say, I can't discount all of, syndicated television, all other, for the LA people, Channel 5, 7-Eleven, Channel 13, and old movies and reruns of Star Trek and all that stuff that we ate up. But during prime time, you did not go to those. You watched whatever. That was the best. It was the best entertainment yet available on television. So you were always making a choice between one thing, one of the 3, and there it is.
Well, I mentioned to you, like I mentioned so many times already on this show, my favorite TV show as a kid was Voyagers. I loved Voyagers. Fantastic Journey had that same vibe at the beginning. at the
Yeah.
beginning of the series.
Yeah.
Okay. It definitely, we'll get into it, but it definitely changed over time. And here's one of the things, we're in a tough spot a little bit because we're talking about the show. And I'm trying to keep in mind also that we're going to be shopping your memoir soon. So I'm trying to give info, and you have a lot about Fantastic Journey in your memoir, and it's great. So people look forward to the memoir for Fantastic Journey content as well. So trying to give information while keeping a little something later on to tease.
Okay, good.
It.
Well, I'll be guided by your questions. That way I don't reveal anything you don't want me to reveal today. So
well, I want to start by talking about how you were feeling at the time, because you've been open about the fact that you were tired of the audition process and you were hoping for the stability of a TV series. So this seemed perfect. How did it come about for you?
Well, yeah, I had really been really, it's the inappropriate word for a child, but lusting after working on a series at a very early age, and just because I loved my career, I loved to work, but I hated to audition because it was just exhausting. And I bring this up all the time. It was for me, because I say this all the time. I really wasn't a performer by nature. I loved doing the work, which is strange because it is performing, but I loved it at that time. I didn't love performing enough that I looked forward to going to a casting office, 3 different casting offices after a full day at school, and driving around all over Hollywood to do this just so I could get a job. That was not fun to me. But it was a necessary evil. And so of course I did it. But by the time I worked on Little House on the Prairie, and I was, watching these other child actors that had long running hit series, and they weren't going, they weren't going through what I was going through in the same way. I really envied that. And so my first opportunity at a major pilot for a major series was a show called Banjo Hackett, and it was starred Don Meredith. I was the co-star. I was the second, second lead in the show. Had a huge cast. It was a big Western produced by, I'm trying to think. It was Bruce Lansbury produced it. And it was for NBC. It was kind of another kind of Little House style thing, because Westerns were very big in the 70s as well. And it was just huge. It was a vehicle for Don Meredith. He was, a huge football player, then commentator of Monday Night Football. That was his thing for a very long time. And then he became an actor and got this opportunity, and he's fantastic. I mean, this is a lovely, lovely, lovely show. And it got sold to series, and I thought, this is it. This is my Little House. And for some strange reason, he didn't want to do it. So
he backed out. He had the show and he backed out?
He backed out. That was what I remember hearing in the rumor mill, because they usually don't always tell you why a show doesn't go. They'll just say, it didn't get bought. Okay, so it didn't become a series. But I mean, this was a huge 2-hour pilot. They ended up just turning it into a movie of the week called Banjo Hackett, Roman Free. It's available on DVD. You can buy it on Amazon. And it's really, I really enjoy it to this day, because it's a wonderful piece of 70s television production, really, really well done. So anyway, that was my first chance, and it fell through. And I just thought, oh gosh, I don't know, it's hard. That's getting a series is one of the hardest things to do in show business. You would think starring in a movie is, but not necessarily. It's very difficult. So then all of a sudden I'm brought in to audition for this show called The Incredible Journey, and it was supposed to be a
I just want to go back before. I'm sorry to cut off. So wouldn't they consider at least like just replacing the lead on Banjo Hackett, just getting someone else to do it? Or I don't.
That's so risky, because you already I mean, the thing about Don Meredith was he had like all 3 of the perfect elements. He had a great personality. He was well known and had been known, in the family entertainment arena through his football commentary for so long. And he skewed very, very high with women. Women loved him. And that's, you kind of need that. You need all of those things. He was just one of those. So no, I mean, it was never talked about. I don't think they ever considered it, because then you're starting over, you're reshooting a pilot to establish now a new character. You don't just have a new actor just kind of take over, although it's been done on other shows, more recently than back in those days. But I don't think that was ever a consideration, and I don't think they would have considered it. So I ended up being called in to read for another pilot for NBC called The Incredible Island, is what the original title of The Fantastic Journey was, The Incredible Island. And I was completely enthralled. I was excited because I ended up finding out it was being produced by Bruce Lansbury from Banjo Hackett and Leonard Katzman, who was a producer on Gunsmoke during the last stages, or at least during the 70s. And he knew my work from Gunsmoke because I'd done 3 episodes of the show.
Oh, okay.
And as a matter of fact, what's funny is, I'll get to that in a second. But anyway, The Incredible Island, it's this science fantasy, I guess, is more what you would qualify it as, that was about the Bermuda Triangle. A group of people that get lost in the Bermuda Triangle, and this island is broken up into all these time zones, and as we get there, we discover what's going on through Jared Martin's character, who does all the explaining for us, so that we and the audience have an idea of what these time zones mean. And it's just this, oddity out in nature somewhere in the Bermuda Triangle. And it was the reason that so many people have disappeared there, never to be seen again, because they end up on this island. So the concept behind it was there were different time zones on the island that would go into the past, the future, right, sideways, long ways, up ways, down ways, whatever it was going to be. And so the pilot was heavily skewed towards these like 16th century, privateers swashbuckling and capturing people and establish their own little fiefdom on in their time zone or whatever. And that's one of the ones, the time zones that our characters fell into. And we have all kinds of adventures surrounding that. And Jared Martin represented the man of the future right, time zone, and with it that he was from, but he ended up in the past along with the rest of us. And that was that was essentially the concept. And we shot the pilot. It got sold. And I was thrilled. I was absolutely thrilled, because I thought, okay, good. I'm finally getting my chance to do a series. I was absolutely giddy about it. And I knew that I had like 12 episodes, at least 12 to 15 weeks where I was going to work every day, no more auditioning. I was going to, have a steady job and get into a groove.
So originally they picked it up for 13 episodes. That was the thing.
Yeah, that is usually the number that 13 weeks is a typical season for a network primetime series. Things change later. I mean, some shows would go into like 20, 22 episodes, but usually they pick them up for 13, and that's what you're contracted for. And then you see what happens after that once it's had a chance to find its audience, if it gets a chance to find its audience. But then all of a sudden I got the script for the next episode, and it was called Atlantium, and which was like this Atlantis science fiction environment, and these characters and kidnapping me. And I end up finding out most of the cast has been eliminated.
I was going to ask about that.
And including the character that plays my father, which was a hugely strange thing to have happen. They tried to explain it in this very strange and half-hearted way about how, no, he was going on ahead back to our time zone, and he'd be sending for me, and I would be joining him soon. And I had this whole strange scene where I had to accept this idea along with Carl Franklin. And Jared was moving along into the series. His character was as well. And we're all staying there trying to make sense of this. And then we just kind of shrug our shoulders and say, okay, let's go along. And then the show just kind of went from there. What they decided to do was make the pilot a 2-part episode where the Atlantean sequences and characters were suddenly then cut back into the pilot, and to weave these two parts together and blend them so that they could then carry the series in the direction they wanted to go, because the decision was NBC wanted to be more science fiction and less historical. I guess the historical parts of it were too expensive. It was going to be a costly production.
But that was the reason.
Yeah, I think so. I think so, but also SciFi TV was really big in the 70s, especially like 76 or 75, 76, 77. I mean, there's so many. You Google them and you've got everything from Logan's Run to, of course, A Bionic Man, Bionic Woman, and all these really, really great shows. So they just really decided that they want to make it more science fiction. So we were only going to go into future time zones, and we were only going to go into science fiction related time zones, period. And that's where the show just took a left turn, and that's where they wanted to go. It was fine with me because I love science fiction. I love doing all that stuff. But it I can't say it caused me concern necessarily. It was just, I thought, okay, if this makes it a more appealing show for the market, I'm all for it, because this betters its chance of succeeding and continuing on, and perhaps, going into a second season. So I think the thing I was the most excited about regarding these changes was bringing Roddy McDowell into the show, because I just
I'm going to ask about him also.
Yeah, we'll get that, but that was the thing I was even more as excited about, as just getting a chance to do a series. So that's kind of how it evolved. It was very weird and strange and choppy and odd. And another thing about the original pilot, he wasn't going to go along with us anyway, but Desi Arnaz Jr. played a character in the original pilot, because one of the storylines they featured regarding the island was the crash, and I forget what the flight number was called. I should know this by heart, but that famous flight of 6 or 9 aircraft that flew over the Bermuda Triangle, all of them disappeared. They have recordings of the radio broadcast from the planes talking to the ground, and then all of a sudden, boom, they just go off the radar, and they never find a single plane.
Just to interject one thing for a second, because we're talking about that. I don't know if anyone remembers this at the time. In the 70s, the Bermuda Triangle was everywhere. It was like such a big thing that there were all these documentaries on TV. I mean, I think Leonard Nimoy had the In Search of one of the episodes as well.
Yeah.
But there was all these things about what's going on in the Bermuda Triangle, and it was like fascinating. It was like perfect timing, because that was like all in the public consciousness at the time.
Oh yeah, and I consumed that stuff like crazy. I was fascinated by all the supernatural or paranormal or strange things that happened, and you think about, it was absolutely everywhere. There were books, and they would do these historical look backs to ships. I mean, ships that disappeared that they were never able to find, and all kinds of things. So yeah, it was a really big deal, and so this concept fit perfectly within the pop culture fascination with the Bermuda Triangle at the time. So they made it a point to put in one of the crashed airplanes from the flight in the episode, which you actually see. But what we don't see is the entire storyline that was cut out, where that pilot got captured by the privateers, and he was also in a jail cell with our lead characters, and we all rescue everyone, but Desi Arnaz Jr. ends up getting killed. So he was not going to go on in the show. He was just in that. No, he was not going to go on. He was going to get killed, which we all knew. And then when they recut the pilot, adding the Atlanteum sections to it, Desi Arnaz Jr. was gone. I mean, they just cut him out of the whole show, which really fascinated me, because I thought, geez, it was my first experience was seeing how easy it was to eliminate a character that had scenes with other characters and was part of the show.
I'm shocked. Wasn't he like a big name though at the time? I mean, really, I
don't know how. Yeah, he was popular. I know he did variety shows. He did things with his with his parents.
Right.
He was acting. So I mean, even Desi Arnaz himself came to the set to say hi, because we were actually shooting at Screen Gems, which was it was called Screen Gems. It was a studio lot that was owned by Desilu Productions, or it had been owned by them at one time. Right. I don't know if they still owned it when we were working there, but it was the same lot that they shot Star Trek on, and all kinds of other shows.
What was Desi like?
I didn't really get to meet him. It was like he was there, just came in to say hi. I met him. I got to shake his hand, and he shook everybody's hand. He watched Desi Jr.'s death scene, and then he took off. So it was very much like having television royalty just visit the set. He had all these people around him, and he was much older at that point as well. But it was just really neat. It was just neat.
Well, I want to ask though, because you were a big Star Trek fan even beforehand, and even before Wrath of Khan. So DC Fontana was involved in the series, who wrote so many great Star Trek episodes. Yeah, was involved with Fantastic Journey. Were you familiar with her already, or just you found out about her?
I heard her name, and of course saw her name on one of the scripts, and I could be. I believe this is accurate, that she was not only brought on to write a script, but she was brought on as a story consultant, just to help guide the show in the science fiction direction based upon her experience with Star Trek. And I think she went back to Wild Wild West as well, which is one of my absolute all-time favorite shows, period. I was aware she had been involved in the original Star Trek, and there were other people on our crew that were involved in the original Star Trek, which just made it really neat. It just made it very cool to have people from that show working on our show. And I just thought, hey, every little bit helps. And so I didn't necessarily know who she was as a writer, but I really enjoyed the scripts that were coming our way. I mean, I don't remember exactly which one she wrote, but the science fiction thing, like I said, was fun for me, and I was enjoying reading the stories, and couldn't wait to go to work each week and see what kind of crazy stuff we were going to do.
Well, one of the things I did mention to you, I mentioned this to you off the air, how I was jealous of you. Besides being in a great sci-fi show, I mean, you were a teen at the time, and I see all the 70s fashions on the women there. I would have been going crazy being on that show. So I was very jealous of you when I saw these episodes.
Well, we don't have to go into detail about it, but it certainly was, it was an interesting time to be sure, to be a teenager. You're right.
well, that'll be in the map. No, it won't. But anyway, so you mentioned that this was a mid-season replacement. I mean, for us simpletons, what's the basic difference? So there are shows that are saved in storage in case one gets canceled. Is that what?
Yeah, exactly. Because it happens very, very frequently. No matter, the best of intentions doesn't always lead to a quality show or a show people want to see, and so they'll air the first 4 or 5 or 6 episodes, and if it's not doing well, they will drop it and replace it with something else. And I don't know how the networks, I was never privy to how the networks determined whether or not they were producing another series as a mid-season replacement or not, or it was going to be part of the main offering when new shows come out during the broadcast, the new broadcast seasons. But we knew going in that we were going to be a mid-season replacement.
You knew this. That's what I'm saying. Is it deflating at all that you're not picked up right away, that you have to wait?
Well, it is that definitely handicaps a show, because you're thinking, okay, we're now coming in late. We're not part of that big beginning of the season constant barrage of advertising about it. So you just hope that people get a chance to see it and enjoy it, even though it's coming in late, very much late. People are already kind of committed to the shows they want to watch, and so therefore it makes it a little bit more difficult for a show that comes in the middle. So I knew that going in. We knew it because of pretty much the point at which the pilot was going to be produced. It was too late in
late in the game. Right.
To come in early, and they didn't want to wait till the next season. They wanted to go ahead and get the show out. The network liked it enough, for to move along and push it even as a mid-season replacement. But that was a little bit of like, oh well, we'll see.
they liked it enough to air you against the Waltons and Welcome Back, Kotter. I mean, good luck with that right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, well, what are you going to do? The Waltons didn't have Roddy McDowell, so there's that.
Right. Well, like I said, the show is on Plex now. That's where I got to see it now, and okay. It's a free streaming service for anyone wanting to watch it now. I was trying to get them all in. I did not get them all in before airing, but I'm going to finish it. But the thing that struck me the most, and I've said this to you, I'm watching, and you just mentioned it a few minutes ago, is when they took your parents away at the end of the thing. And I've talked to you about this before off the air. It just struck me, and I'm watching, I'm like, what the hell? I'm thinking it's because there were no parents involved, because there have been other shows with that. So that wasn't the big deal to me that there were no parents involved. The kid is trapped in a strange place without a parent, but we were starting with the parents. They were trapped with you. And I'm going to say, like I said, I do like the show. And I know that I'm looking at it from an adult lens now, but I know as a kid, I wouldn't have even questioned it. And I watched contentedly. But Scott, your character was just like, my parents are gone, shrug and go on. And they're fine. So what were you thinking when you saw the script? I mean, right off that all these were written out, were you thinking like, this is so strange, so bizarre?
Oh, 100%. I couldn't believe that that's what they were doing. But see, I was, as much as aware as I wasn't always, I didn't know how they made these decisions. I could see how we had a bloated cast. We had a lot of characters, and that's not always easy to do going forward. How do you follow all these characters' stories? And usually it's better with a tighter, smaller group, because you can separate people out and put them in jeopardy. And then you still have enough to come together to get through the adventure successfully, et cetera, et cetera. But when you've got like 7 people, I mean, or 8, I don't even remember how many it was. Then you have to have guest characters come on the show. That's just a lot. It's just very, I don't know, convoluted, I think. But the fact that my father was not going to be there was just totally and completely bizarre to me. And then when I read the words about how they explained it, I thought, man, no one's going to believe this. I mean, how are they going to believe this? And then I just realized, how am I going to act this? I don't know. I don't know how to act this, because I'm supposed to be now sad, disappointed, abandoned, but resolved. I mean, so much had to happen in that awkward scene that I just did the best I could. And not even the director, as I recall, he just kind of said, I do the best you can with this. Just do the best you can. So it was very hard. I had to think it through in my own head, even around the words, to kind of like get my emotion in the right place, or my confusion and disbelief in the right place, to just make it work.
Well, like I said, I probably wouldn't even questioned it at the time. I really wouldn't have as a kid, if I was a kid watching it. As an adult now, I'm thinking, there's no way I'm just leaving my kid behind. Like, oh, my kid will be fine. It's strange. I'm not going anywhere. What do you remember, or the cast remember, hearing about it at the time? Did they give you a reason why they cut the parents out?
No, I mean, they just said, we're taking the show in a different direction. And some of the cast is not going to go along, but some of them are. And I literally just felt selfishly lucky that I was one of the ones that went along. But then again, that's part of the formula. You've got to have a kid in the show. And and to be honest, I I didn't dislike it. I liked it
more,
because
more screen time for you.
well, it's not so much more screen time, but I got to do more kind of adult things than I was doing kid things. Because when you have a parent, then I mean, I'm not saying it would have bothered me for it to go this way, but then all of a sudden now you're a child being shepherded by a parent, so they're going to teach you lessons and they're going to help you, and you're going to have to make childish mistakes and all of that. And I really didn't have to do that once they made those changes. It was just it was just surprising to me, and it was also just incredibly awkward to try to get through that one scene to transition away from it. But then of course once we transitioned away from it, was never brought up ever again.
Yes, I heard.
I mean, until a certain point. Yeah, there was a certain point in that episode, I think, where they still used my father as a draw or something like that, but after that, yeah, that was it. Gone. Hopefully we'll get back home, but
no one heard from any of the actors again about that. Did they reach out to anyone? No, I don't know how it works, if that happens at all.
The thing is, it's a business, and when you're done, you're done, and everyone moves on, and that's pretty much it.
Was there any sort of worry that, like, hey, any of us could be next? Was there like any of that on the cast?
I don't think so. No, I didn't feel that. I didn't feel that way. No one else really felt that way. And it was never really talked about it. I mean, once we had an established cast, it was a strong group, interesting characters. And so I didn't see any risk of that until one of the cast members took themselves out, but we'll get to that.
Right, we'll get to that. We're going to get to that, believe me. So, I just want now, in regular series, is that like a fear in like regular? Can that happen in a regular series that someone just be written out? I mean, I have seen shows like someone's written out of a show because they're not testing well or something. So is that like, can that happen often or something?
Yeah, it can. It can. Some people don't want to continue to do a show for whatever reason, and sometimes producers don't want to, perhaps don't want to work with an actor, and they, for whatever reason, and they want to write them out. Or sometimes well, not in those days so much. Characters were always pretty much there for the long haul, because you needed that. You couldn't have characters coming and going unless it was like something like Little House, where inevitably characters are going to grow up and they're going to change. The children were going to get married, and maybe they would leave and move on. Do they all really stay there? And you have to make creative decisions about those things. And then new characters come on shows like that, and to reinvigorate the franchise and the long running entertainment value of the show. So it does happen. I can't think of any instances that I know of where I was suddenly surprised that a character wasn't going to be on a show anymore. And sometimes after a few seasons, maybe one of the actors wants way too much money to keep going. And if they do, then it's like, well, we're not going to pay that. Well, then I'm not going to do it. Well, okay, fine. And then they're written out.
Three's Company, we're talking.
Yeah.
So Katie Saylor comes onto the show.
Yeah.
She did not have many credits before Fantastic Journey. I think her biggest role was Invasion of the Bee Girls, which I haven't seen, but judging by the clips, I'm going to need to. And I don't know how much we should talk about Katie, because you have a great Katie Saylor story in your memoir, but let's leave it at that. She was not beloved on the set, right?
Yeah, no, we'll save part of that story for the memoir, but yeah, no, Katie Saylor she was my first actual experience with a diva on set. I mean, someone who she just came on like she was the biggest star on the planet and expected to be treated that way, catered to. We were constantly having to work around her being late to the set. She spent a long time in makeup. She treated the crew terribly. None of us really got along with her, and it was really a bummer, because I even had conversations with Roddy about this, because I just would ask him, I would always say, this is the most fun business you can be in, and we're so privileged and fortunate to be a part of it. Why would you do something to make the job hard or uncomfortable for anyone? Because everyone's there. Most working environments for people in jobs they enjoy are very supportive. Everybody supports everybody else, and you're there for each other, which is what makes it rewarding. And that was something that was very important to me, and something I enjoyed greatly about being on film and television sets and productions, because everyone loved their job. Everybody did. No one was disgruntled. And because of that, great work gets done, and everyone's having a good time. And, there are problems, there are personality conflicts occasionally, but that all just, is par for the course.
Right.
But when someone like Katie comes in, making things difficult instantly, and it was just like, man, I really don't like her. Nobody did.
I'm shocked, because to me, it's like, look at your credits, look at your resume to see where you rank in the pecking order. And for someone that did not have many credits and had been in kind of literally a B movie,
things can go to people's heads. She also could have just been someone who her ego got the best of her, because she went from doing, a small, a nothing. I haven't even seen clips of that, whatever that film was. She
Invasion
did.
of the P girls.
Yeah. And then now she's starring on an NBC, co-starring on an NBC network series. And it was just all very strange. But we basically just ignored her. We just ignored her.
Yeah.
That's so.
I have a surprise for you, coming in live from Studio City, Los Angeles. Katie Saylor. Katie, thanks for joining.
Yeah.
I just wanted to see your face.
I swear. Well, the funny thing is, if you could have found her, you would have been more successful in journalism than anyone ever, because no one's ever been able to figure out what happened to her, and we'll get to that later.
I think I could have found it. I think I could have found it if I actually looked. If you want her on the show, I will find her. I give you my guarantee now. But
no, I don't think we need to go there.
So she didn't make it until the end of the show. She left with a couple of episodes left. So what happened? What did you hear that happened, and what did happen?
I don't know. No one really knew. She was disgruntled from day one. And there were some situations that occurred on set. And this is hinting at my story that
Right.
I had something to do with, and Roddy McDowell had something to do with. And
they did say that you were to blame. They said
no. I'm saying
Okay.
I feel I bear a
you feel
certain level
responsible.
of responsibility because I participated in a little semi-revenge scheme that was completely anonymous, but other members of the crew were getting tired. They were getting tired of her shenanigans as well, and mouthing off back at her, and she didn't like it. She just didn't like it. I don't think she really wanted to be an actress. I don't think she liked the entire environment. Because for some people it's just too demanding. So no one had a reason, no one understood why, but it was her choice. She quit. She said, "That's it. I'm not doing it anymore." And we were getting ready to shoot the next episode, of course, which she was prominent in, as everyone. And then that morning, Monday morning, we got an entirely new script, which rarely happens. It's an interesting little detail that I love to reflect back on, because when you get a script, whether it's a movie or a TV show, all the pages are white, and then there's a hierarchy of pastel colors that when pages are rewritten, or they have scenes where they need to rewrite something, change some dialogue, change some direction, or whatever it is, they would type back in the days when people typed. They typed the new pages in a different color, and it would start out yellow, gold, pink, light blue, purple, and it would move on down based upon how many changes there were. So you always expected those, because everyone was constantly rewriting everything all the time. And then there would be little asterisks in the body of that page that would show you where the change was made. was an edit that happens. It got cut out, or there was something was different. So you had to make sure we were constantly having to read our new pages. Our new pages would be in our dressing rooms every morning. Well, that day we got a brand new script. It was all in yellow. And I just went, what is going on? And the producers came around and said, Katie Saylor has decided to leave the show. Wow. We're going to move on without her. Here's our new script. And Roddy and I had the first lines of dialogue that explained that, oh, she just decided to go back to her own time zone and or whatever it was. And we're just casually walking along and saying, oh, well, Katie's gone. I can't remember her character's name. She's
is it Liana or something?
Ilana or Ilana, something, Liana, something like that. Yeah. Nope. She's decided to move along. I was like, oh, okay, well, there we go. And then another character was gone, and it really cracked me up.
Because this was her last credit. This is her last credit on IMDb.
Yeah,
nothing after this.
There was no news about her other than she left the show. No one ever heard anything about her ever again. And when I was researching, parts of my memoir, obviously this one, I Google searched her. I tried to find out if she had no digital footprint whatsoever. I mean, I didn't know if she was married, divorced, where she lived. I think there might've been a couple things that said that she went into isolation somewhere. I don't know, something there were, and I don't know how true or accurate any of it is, but that was it. She was gone from the business.
Okay. I am going to say, because I did do searching, and you could cut this out later on if you don't want to.
No, I think it's interesting. I
did find that a place where I found a spouse and a place where she lives, supposedly, with a phone number. So like I said, Katie, if you ever see this episode, would love to have you on. Maybe some healing with Ike now, all these years later.
Well, maybe the mystery could be solved.
Right.
Learn a little bit more about what was going on.
So if I might have to reach out one day just to see if she would come on the show. So I'm thinking ratings. So.
Yeah, you always are. Self-serving.
So I do have to ask, what was up with the brain in the glass tube and the telepathic cat?
Oh, well, I don't know. The telepathic cat it cracked me up. I was always seemed to be around some animal in some way, shape, or form, no matter what I worked on. So the telepathic cat was kind of like, I think it was kind of like Star Trek's tricorder, or which Varian's little wand was also one of those things too. But right. the cat could get us out of a situation maybe that we needed help with or whatever. And it was interesting to have it along. I always like working with animals. But the brain thing, it was so like cheap Star Trek in a sense. And it really amused me. I have to say it amused me. And I thought, I don't know if this is going to work, but it actually
disappeared.
What's that?
But then it disappeared.
Oh, because that was associated with Atlantean.
I mean, right.
Yeah, that was it. When we moved on, it stayed back there.
Because I thought there was going to be such a huge part of the show when I was watching. I thought this was going to be
that's very interesting. I had never actually thought about that. No, it was well, we destroyed it first and foremost. So that was that. Yeah, at the end of the Atlanteum episode, we with the lasers, and I don't remember what Carl Franklin did.
I thought it was coming back. I really did.
Oh no.
This would be a recurring.
That's hilarious. No, I never even heard anything about it after that. But I loved the prop. The prop was just absolutely hilarious. I mean, there was guys with pumps that would pump it up, and they had a valve. They'd bleed that it would deflate. It was a balloon, is what it was, with a light in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was just a balloon. It was rubber.
I love hearing that. I love hearing that stuff. I love hearing
it is, and it's so cool inside that plexiglass cylinder with the bubbling water around it.
Very
and
cool.
Yeah. Well, the prop master, I know the prop master on our show worked on Star Trek too. So
definitely
Star Trek 2, the original Star Trek series.
Right.
And so he he had his shop where they made all these things. And I just love that stuff. I mean, I love that stuff. Yeah. And the whole tuning fork, magic wand that Valerian had, Jared Martin had, was so interesting because it was, I mean, this was back before, back when electronics were bulky and heavy and lights were hot, and to put a light inside something like that was a major device. It got hot in his hand. It had wires running out of it that went up his shirt sleeve and down his pants to the power source. And so he'd hold it up. And if he was standing there with it like this, he had cords running through his body to operate it. And they would dial it up and down. And,
that is so cool.
Yeah, I mean, it was great. It was great stuff. That's one prop I wish I had snuck off with for sure. Yeah.
Oh, did you take anything? Did you take anything from
No, I think about it. I did not take anything from that show. And it's a shame because it's not like it was like the props would come and go, and I really didn't think about it like I thought about it on Witch Mountain. Witch Mountain was so important to me, and I'm gonna have to tweet this and show it sometime. But I have one of the original harmonicas from the film that I kept.
Very cool.
And yeah, it sits on a shelf next to our television. So I see it every night. It's like
very,
up there.
Very cool.
Yeah, I truly love that. I truly love it. And yeah.
Oh, you just mentioned Jared Martin, who played Varian. Now, now remember, I did not know much about the show. I purposely kept it that way until I started watching because I didn't want to spoil anything. But when he first appeared, I thought he's going to be this like enigmatic figure who the family won't ever know if they can trust or not. And suddenly he becomes the lead. So what was your relationship with him? I mean, as well as Carl Franklin, who played Fred, what was your relationship with both of them?
They were, I mean, I was always, other than Katie, so fortunate to work with super supportive, really smart, caring actors that number one, first and foremost, always was, I never wanted to be treated like a child. I wanted to be treated just like one of the other adults. And I think I carried myself that way to a certain extent because I loved being around. I loved working with and spending time with the adult actors. And Jared was just as, interesting and kind and introspective and kind as that character was. I mean, it was very much who he was as a person. And Carl was just funny. He was hilarious. He and Roddy were both just absolutely hilarious. I loved working with all of them. And we got along great. We joked on set. We made fun of stuff and tried to keep it play. We didn't take it super seriously, which is what we needed to do. But that was that was fun. We made that fun. I mean, Roddy and I would play around with the dialogue sometimes because it was just hard to say, and I'd give him alternate lines, and he'd say, "God, yeah, I really like that. Let's do it." And then we just do it. We wouldn't tell anybody. We just change up the dialogue sometimes. So they were just great to be around. Easy to be around.
It was definitely a fun show. And I'm going to ask about Roddy McDowall now. I'm going to get into him, and I want to say as a fan and just as a TV viewer, I loved Roddy McDowall. I loved him in Planet of the Apes, loved him on the many Disney films he was in, loved him on Fright Night and everything. So he was not a plan for the show at the beginning. He was just came in. They contacted him after the parent. They wrote off the parents and the other family members.
Yeah, he comes on in essentially the second episode because it's like
it was the third.
The pilot was 2 parts, so it was the third episode. Right. It was the third episode for sure. The third episode, and his character was a new character who was clearly the kind of like, I don't, you always need that curmudgeon or that character that's going to create some difficulty and conflict in your storytelling, and he was there to suit that purpose. And although he started out much more much more as a much more difficult character in his the introduction to him. He became a lot softer as the series went on. But
he was the Dr. Smith of your show.
Yeah, exactly. That was it. That's what I was struggling for from Lost in Space, the Dr. Smith. Which, which just again raises the fun factor for everybody. I mean, if you don't have somebody you're going to occasionally have to fight, or you're going to have to save, or you're going to have to pull out of a difficult situation within your own cast, then you don't really have anything going on. Everybody's just fighting whoever we end up running into villain wise. But I don't know if anyone else was offered the part. I don't know if it was kind of basically written with him in mind. And I was so amazed that he was going to be in it, let alone that, they had reached out to him to be a part of the show. And he was probably the actor I was most excited in my entire career about meeting. Because I loved him too. I mean, Planet of the Apes was just, it's just another one of those things we talk about it when we talk about movies, but seeing Planet of the Apes in the movie theater, in 1970 was just like, oh my God, it was just incredible. And I watched everything that I saw him in. I loved him in. And he, when I learned that he started as a child actor, and How Green Was My Valley, which of course I ended up watching during the course of Fantastic Journey just to see him in it, because it happened to be on television during, on one of those, one of those other channels that we were talking about. And I thought, man, I mean, he's been in this business his entire life and he's still working. He was a huge influence on me in many ways, in how I looked at my career. Because I mean, he was like one of those actors that knew how to not only have fun, do his job, be there, super professional, but when we weren't working, he knew how to occupy his time. And he read constantly. He played crossword puzzles. He was, always had something to do while he was on set. He was never bored. He never got tired of his downtime. He put it to good use. And it was another lesson I learned from him, because you spend a lot of time waiting around. I mean, that happens a lot, even though I had school that I could do, that I had to do, which kept me busy. But then the other times when I would be finished with school and then I'm hanging out with the rest of the adults, I would end up just continuing to read. And I kind of learned a lot of those things from him, just about how to manage.
Was he as nice as he appeared to, like, everyone else?
Beyond. Mm-hmm. The way I describe him in my book is, I thought I was nice to people on set, because I made it a point to always, because I loved it so much. And I felt like when he came in, he made me feel like a spoiled child actor, petulant child actor. He was just that nice. And I want to tell this story because I love this story, and it's very typical. It's about what a gracious person he can be in a situation he didn't have to be. His only demand, the only thing he demanded of on set, was that no one sit in his personal director's chair. He had his own director's chair that he brought with him to work. And we all know what director's chairs look like. Generally speaking, they're nothing special about him, but his was white lacquer paint. He had a leather seat in it, a leather back behind it, and big red letters was embroidered Roddy. And well, not Roddy McDowell, just Roddy. So it was like, you walked through where all of our chairs were set up. His chair was prominent. You could not miss it. And what often happened on sets, and this never bothered anybody, we would all have our chairs with our names, like stenciled on the back. So we had our chair to go to, then the director had his chair, then the cinematographer had his chair, and the screen, the writer, there would be producers' chairs that often would not occupy because the producers weren't there. But so everyone had a place to sit when you weren't working. But the crew did not have their own chairs. So it was just a common practice that when the actors were on the set, the crew could sit in the actors' chairs. Usually they wouldn't with the stars, but it was okay. It never bothered me. It was fine. But Roddy was very adamant that no one sit in his chair ever. He is the only person who should sit in that chair. And he told everyone this all the time. He made an announcement. Even the ADs would make announcements if they saw someone go and sit in his chair. It's like, no, you can't sit in Roddy's chair. And that was the only thing he demanded. And we had a situation where there was a new crew member who came on the show late in the series, and he ended up sitting in Roddy's chair while we were shooting a scene. And Roddy came over, and he just hadn't gotten the memo, right? So Roddy just said, Fred, George, whatever his name was, I've forgotten. Please, I only have one thing I ask of people, is that no one sits in my chair when I'm working and it's clearly available. So if you wouldn't mind, I would really appreciate it if you wouldn't sit in my chair. And he said, yeah, fine. Absolutely. I'm so sorry. I won't do it. And I have to preface this by saying these were the tall director's chairs, not the short ones close. It was a tall one that you had to kind of step up and sit into. So we went back to shooting the same scene, and literally camera started rolling and action was called, dialogue started, and all of a sudden we heard the loudest crash I've ever heard on a set in my life. And everybody ducked because we thought a light fell, because this happens on a rare occasion. A light won't be tied off well enough, and boom, it drops to the floor. And thankfully, I never saw anyone actually got hurt by something like that. But when you hear a crash on a soundstage, you immediately like duck, because you don't know what's coming behind it. And all of a sudden we all turned, and we saw the grip flat on the floor. The chair was splintered and broken into multiple pieces, because this was a big guy. I mean, he wasn't like me. He was a big guy. And it was like out of a scene of a movie. The entire set just parted like the Red Sea, and made space for Roddy to go deal with this. And Roddy walked over very slowly, actually helped him get up off the ground. And he said, and that, young man, is why I don't want anyone else sitting in my chair. And he just started blubbering and blathering and saying, "My God, I'm sorry. And Roddy then said, I'm going to get you a card for the man who made this, and I expect you to have it replaced for me. And we won't talk any more about it after that." And this poor guy, could not imagine how much this chair cost. But within a week, Roddy had his new chair there. Wow. And he never bothered him about it again. They got along fine. That's just how cool he was. And I thought, man, anybody else would have the guy fired, because I mean, you can't be much clearer than please don't sit in my chair. And yet he did it anyway. And we were just like, oh my God, what a huge mistake. But that's what Roddy was like. And I loved him. We stayed in contact after working for many, many years. And and he was always one. He sent me Christmas cards every year. And
not to be a jerk, you also have a great Roddy McDowell story in your memoir, which people will read later, but you do have one in there.
Yeah, I do. We really, he was probably one of the best friends I ever made.
That's good.
From anyone I ever worked with. And it's interesting having friendships that last beyond working on a film. There was one other relationship that I had that was with Alfred Woodard after Cross Creek. We stayed very close friends for a very long time. And she was a dear. I truly loved her, not only as an actress, but one of the best people I've ever met, let alone worked with. And we spent a lot of time together after shooting Cross Creek for quite a long time. And so she was another one, but Roddy was just one of those people that we were able to kind of maintain, because a set is in an interesting space. You're there to work, you're there under pressure, you're all there for a common purpose. And then when that common purpose is gone, I found it very awkward to just say, hey, what are you up to? It's, a lot of people have stayed friends with the people they've worked with. And I can see after working, when you're on a series, those relationships last for years. And so you do become friends. When you're doing a guest spot on something or you're doing a movie, it's a number of a number of weeks or a couple of months, and then and then you're moving on to other things. So they don't, for me, never really quite worked out that way. But Roddy was like that. He was just an amazing man.
My wheels are already spinning about reaching out to Alfred Woodard now. So
I have no doubt.
But, so now you bring up an interesting thing here. So you work with like some giants in the industry over your career, like Roddy McDowell, Ray Milland, Eddie Albert, then later Betty Davis, Christopher Lee. Was it all right for you to go over and ask them like questions about their career? Was that considered like taboo on the set?
The interesting thing is that I just didn't do it. It was I wouldn't say taboo. It was just bad form.
That's what I was wondering. Okay.
And if I could have asked,
so I would have been, tell me about this, tell me about that.
Well, yeah, because then you're interfering with the job, and
Sure.
you're turning into a fan, which is, there's nothing wrong with being a fan or having fans, but you're in a
Not
work
film.
environment, and I always felt
Sure.
like there was just a professional boundary where I didn't cross it, and the one time I did cross it, and I've told this story before,
Yeah.
was with Gary Lockwood, and it really backfired on me in a way that I didn't expect. And so I don't know that experience was what did it for me, but I just never felt like it was appropriate. And and yet some performers really wanted to share about their experiences in some way. And I worked with Pat O'Brien on a Disney project called The Sky's the Limit, and Pat O'Brien played Newt Rockney and Father Flanagan, and he was a very, very famous studio actor back in the 40s and 50s, and he liked to talk about his career. And he actually, just one day we were talking, I don't know, Newt Rockney had been on. It's just so funny. I would work with people and then their movies would be on, and I ended up watching it, and I'd never seen it before. So I told him I had watched it over the weekend, and he was so pleased. He was so incredibly pleased that I was interested, because I was 12 years old.
That's great.
He was so pleased. And then I swear to God, it was the strangest thing, most interesting thing I'd ever experienced, where he launched into the monologue. He did the big one for the one for the Gipper, that famous,
That's really cool.
one of the most famous monologues in all of film history. And he performed it for me right there. We were just sitting next to each other, and I get emotional when I think about it, because I was just like, awesome. My jaw was, it was fantastic. So, there are times when they drop their own boundaries, but you just don't feel like you
have to see if they do it. You have to.
Yeah, I felt that way. That's how I felt. I don't know how other people are. I don't know.
Well, getting to some of the guest stars that you had on. I mean, first of all, like I mentioned before, with some of the other, with the brain, you had like Gary Collins, Marianne Mobley, and Ian McShane. I thought all of them were going to be in the show again. None of them were. So I thought all these are going to be like come back. Like these villains are going to come back. But you also had like, now again, as a teenager, I would have been going nuts. You had Cheryl Ladd, Joan Collins. What do you remember about any of them? About any of the guest stars that you had on?
I had a massive crush on Cheryl Ladd. I don't mind admitting it. I tweet about it. She was, and I don't even remember how old she was when she did it. And that was one of her first acting roles in television. I think she might have done a few things before. I can't really remember, because that might not be accurate, but she was unknown. She wasn't known. Right. But it's like, I hate to go into these kinds of things necessarily, but it always fascinates me. There are some people who are more beautiful in real life than they are actually on screen, and she was one of those people. And I say this about men as well. There are other actors that I just thought there was just something about them that was actually was more prominent or more evident when you met them in person than it was when you saw them in a film. And she was one of those people. I had a terrible crush on her, and she didn't do anything to discourage it. And it was very sweet. I mean, she made a young teenage boy feel quite confident, which was nice. So that was a lovely thing. Joan Collins, she was a great lady. I don't remember anything specific about her one way or the other, but I remembered her from Star Trek. I knew her from other things I'd seen. So it was exciting to have her on the show. John Saxon, it was so exciting to have him on the show. And many of the other people. I mean, Richard Jekyll was in our last episode, an Academy Award winning actor. I'd worked with him on a Disney project as well. And so just to have these caliber of these actors as guest stars on my series was just heady. It was heady stuff.
Well, I'll say this now again, and I want to preface it because I don't, because I know you were in it, and I know there are tons of fans of the show. I mean, really tons of fans. And I was surprised every single time that you post, like, how many comments on Fantastic Journey, how much they love the show. And I missed out on it as a kid. And I know that I would have loved the show back then there too. And I'm enjoying it now. But I have to say, I'm looking at it with adult eyes now. Mm-hmm. And it annoys me at what could have been with the show, because it seems like that from episode to episode, a lot of times that they were just throwing things out there to see what would stick instead of going with one vision throughout the show. So I was that due to like network interference, like change this, change that? It didn't seem like they gave the writers, like, to me, like time to like form their vision straight through. I mean, even from the first couple of episodes, it changed in episode 3. Like we were talking about they were going to be places in the past, and that cut out also, quickly. So do you think the network kept saying, I want this, I want that, and the writers was just scrambling to fix what the network wanted?
Well, I know they were scrambling from not the beginning, because I would imagine that Bruce and Leonard had very a clear idea where they wanted the series to go, because you can't pitch a series. I know those producers were so huge, they may have been able to just pitch a pilot and figure it out as they move along, but usually you're going to pitch 10 episodes deep, or at least have an outline of where you want the episodes to go and the kind of adventures your characters are going to go on. And so when the network changed its mind about the theme, then I think they did have to scramble. And I think that was probably part of what, if it suffered for that, if it suffered creatively, that would have been, I think, part of a root cause of it, because all of a sudden now you're making up a whole new science fiction show after you've already established an idea of a concept in a pilot. And it's interesting to hear your take on it from this perspective, because I'm too close to it to kind of see what missed opportunities there might have been.
The concept is fantastic. I mean, just looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, I liked some of the things where the episodes went. But it seemed for a time, it just seemed for a time zone show that we never went into the past just didn't make sense. I mean, it didn't make sense. We were always bouncing from, and were they really time zones? I mean, where do these people come from? I mean, yes, right. Conceptually, you're saying this is the Bermuda Triangle. Obviously, you've got to be in that part of the planet to get trapped on this island. You just don't get teleported there from your planet. And yet there were this whole civilizations that were that we were encountering, with populations and armies and buildings and all of so it I agree with you. I think it suffered for not having a really strong spine of what it was going to be, and I think the writers were kind of scrambling. We got to come up with something, and they came up with what they came up with. But I liked some of the ideas. I really did like. I liked the whole the interesting 3 characters at the the abandoned carnival. It wasn't a carnival, but the amusement park. I thought that was a very eerie show. I really liked it. And just some of the other ones were very interesting, but all in all, I was having a great time. I was having fun.
Oh, for
I
sure, I could see that.
I didn't think about it too much. What I did think about was when we were preempted and the shows weren't airing, and everyone felt that on the set. That causes great stress, because I do mention it in my book, but crews, everybody reads the trades. If you're working on a show, everyone's got a steady job. That show goes away, everyone's got to look for, for their next gig. So everyone has a vested interest. And
so there was this feeling on the set.
100%. 100%, because people would talk about it. They'd say, God, I can't believe it. We got preempted again. Yeah, I know. When's the next episode airing? I don't know. I guess we're just gonna have to watch and see when they start to promote it, or whatever. And so that leaves you a bit deflated. And because I even at 13 years old, knew that much about the industry and what the implications of that were. None of us were very optimistic we were going to get picked up. What we didn't expect was to get canceled before we finished shooting.
Well, that's all 12 episodes. At what point do you start thinking we might not get picked up? At what point in the show did you start having that feeling?
When you see the ratings. I mean, if you're at the bottom of the ratings, unless a network, and these things happen. We've had guests on our show that talk about these exact occurrences. If you've got a network executive or the head of the network whose child sees something and says, Daddy, I really like that show. Well, heaven and earth gets moved to make sure that show has a chance. So it's some things like that happen. And at other times it's a strict business decision. If the ratings are low, it's not making money, you can't sell ads, and you don't, especially with only 3 networks. You can't allow a show to continue.
That's a good point.
As an act of charity to everyone who's working on it. You've got to have viewership, and if you don't have the viewership, if you can see that, you can pretty much know, it's not going to go again, unless, for, like I said, there's some other reason and someone really, really believes in the show and they really want to give it a chance, and they're going to infuse new energy and effort into its success. You can tell. We could all tell. But like I said, we didn't expect to get fired before we finished shooting all 12.
So when were you notified?
Oh, on the set, the 10th episode, shooting the 10th episode, the producers came down and said, we've been canceled. Yeah, this is our last episode.
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry to tell you guys this, but have a good time, get it done, and thank you so much for all your hard work. It's just that kind of speech.
What a terrible feeling as you're filming.
Yeah, and then you're walking around going, oh wow, okay, wow, so yeah.
What a dreary atmosphere to continue filming afterwards.
Yep.
So, but now you just said they only filmed 10. Did you see scripts for the other 3 at all, or no?
I don't think I got the last 2, because
but they exist.
They must. They must. I don't know. I don't know how the production timeline worked. I don't know how far in advance the scripts were written. Usually they have to be weeks in advance, because there's prep work that has to be done before you do a show, and props and sets built and locations found and planning that goes along with that. So I have to assume they were written, but we just did not, the actors just didn't get them. We would get our script for the following week while we were shooting the show we were shooting. Then we would get one delivered that we were going to be then working on the next week. So we didn't have scripts piled up all over the place, but so I'm assuming they were written.
So I'm curious to know if you knew what was going to happen next after you don't know.
And if I was told, I have no recollection. Yeah.
So did we mentioned the others, you Katie Saylor, you left and you didn't hear from again. You kept in contact with Roddy McDowell. And I know you recently spoke briefly to Carl Franklin. Did you ever speak to Jared Martin at all after the series at all?
Yeah, we actually worked together again on Wonder Woman.
Oh, cool.
We did, the Phantom roller coaster. And see, I have to double check this too. I keep hearing that was the last Wonder Woman episode, which I don't know that that's true. But it was a big fun two-part Wonder Woman, and Jared played this very interesting character who was highly compromised. He was a roller coaster designer, and I end up again, teen in jeopardy, falling through some trap door on the floor into the dungeons of this amusement park where he hides and works because he's like the Phantom of the Opera. He's a disfigured character, and we had a great time getting back together, and it was just really fun. It was like old home week for he and I, and but I mean, outside of that, the only other time I saw him was many years later for an actual Fantastic Journey fan convention that was hosted in England, and I don't remember what town it was in, but both Jared and I, and I don't know if Carl had been invited but decided not to attend, but both Jared and I wanted to attend, and so we were there together and just surrounded by nothing but Fantastic Journey fans, and It was really a lot of fun. It was really a lot of fun.
Well, that brings up the next question. Now, when did you start seeing that this really wasn't like a failed show because it had achieved this like big cult status? When did you first start realizing that?
Well, I knew it was going to have some classic legs, if you will, when the Sci-Fi Channel first came on. And it's so funny because we're showing our age by saying came on the air, because nothing comes on the air anymore. It all goes through a cable in the ground. But when Sci-Fi Channel became part of the cable lineup, in order for them to have any content, they were licensing every 70s sci-fi show ever, Battlestar Galactica, Star Trek. They were playing, because Star Trek plays everywhere, and they picked up Fantastic Journey and they were running it to death. They were running the show over and over and over and over and over again for a good year or two, as I recall, until their original shows started slotting in and taking over. And then now, of course, they're all original. I don't think they really show any older shows anymore. But man, it was like everybody was saying, God, did you know Fantastic Journey is playing? I said, yes, I can't believe it. And so it either picked up its cult following during that time period with all the science fiction fans that wanted to enjoy this new cable channel, plus people that remembered the show wanting to see it again, and they had no other way to see it because it had just disappeared. And then once it was off the Sci-Fi Channel, a number of companies were trying to release the series on DVD, and somehow, I don't know, it was because of the Sci-Fi Channel deal or another deal that happened after that, the rights to the show were tied up in legal problems.
Oh, wow.
So no one could secure them to officially release the DVDs. And so the DVD that's out that you can buy, I don't know that it's an actual legitimate.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I own it. I bought it. It's actually pretty good quality, which I was impressed by, because all of my episodes and anything you see me post, if I post clips or images from the episodes, are from my Betamax tapes that I recorded when it was first on the air. So they're a little crunchy and low res and don't look that great, but I still have them on that format. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't want to talk about, like, say something has not been done appropriately when perhaps it has, and I'm just ignorant.
Are there any specials on the DVD, or just basic?
No, not that I saw. Not that I saw at all. But I'm glad to know that it's available out there on a free streaming service. That's great.
Yeah, so, I've been watching it on Plex. Like I said, if everyone wants to go see it, I was going to get the DVD set, and then I saw that it is on this streaming service.
Yeah.
So people can go watch it there. I would love to see a DVD with special features on it. I don't know if they'll ever do that, but
yeah.
So. Yeah. Not like you said, unfortunately, not too many of you left. So that's the
which is so weird to say. It's like, oh my gosh, you don't start feeling old till everyone around you's passing, from the passing from the past. So
right,
but it's true. It's true.
Now, do you still go back? How often do you go back and watch the episodes?
I haven't watched them since I wrote I wrote my memoir. Because I needed to refresh my memory and kind of re-immerse myself back into it, which is one of the things that that I truly love about those memories for me, because it seemed like the shows that I watched more frequently were the ones that 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 I remembered more about. So sometimes I'll see things that I don't remember doing, and because I just haven't watched them that much. I watched Fantastic Journey a few times, and then this time around I sat down with my wife, because she'd never seen the show, obviously, right. and we watched them together, and that was fun. So, but it's been a while, but I don't know that it's something I will sit down and do again, unless I need to for a specific reason, or some years from now I might just want to like you said, revisit it.
You still get calls for conventions to represent Fantastic Journey?
No. I mean, yes, they people still want autographs from that show, and which is nice. So I always have material that I can offer people from that show when I do a convention, for sure. Because I mean, it's like it does have a cult following. It has a massive cult following in England, more so than anywhere else, because that's where that convention was hosted. And that was the thing that blew Jared and I away. It was like, good gosh, who knows this show? And this was before Sci-Fi Channel, I think. I don't know. You know what? I have to check the chronology. I can't exactly remember, but yeah, I mean, fans love it. I always get quite a lot of people who say they fondly remember the show. They enjoy it. They love it. It went away too soon. It was canceled too soon. And I couldn't agree more.
No, I agree with that. And that's one of the things that I've seen. That's what surprised me always. I told you, was just seeing the level of engagement, any post having to do with not just your post, but like you mentioned, like, other Twitter handles that post like classic TV things. They post a Fantastic Journey, and I see all these comments on it. I see all these likes on it. And when I posted on social media earlier this week about Fantastic Journey, everyone started putting I put it all over the place, and everyone started giving me like, what they wanted to see and what questions to ask, which I think we did cover all their questions. But
awesome. That's great.
I was surprised. So just to end it up here, what are your thoughts? What are your overall thoughts on the show? Looking back on it now, what do you remember most and about it?
I just remember having such a great time, and really it's my relationships with everybody I worked with that I really value. I mean, they're great memories for me, and it was so exciting to finally have booked a series. I was just terribly disappointed when it ended, because it meant I had to go back out and start auditioning again. But I love doing science fiction. I love being a part of that, and making all that sometimes silly stuff seem real for the audience, and playing with it. I mean, look, I was a kid that got to play like no other, like very few children get to play. I mean, how many kids get to play real space, real ray gun, real real alternate universe games with grown-ups? It's very rare. So that's it. And I'm just happy. I am so honored to be a part of people's memories, and and a part of something that they enjoy so much, and really getting a chance to reach out, even primarily just on social media, share things with people, anecdotes and little details and things like that, and hearing back how fondly they remember these things, especially Fantastic Journey. I mean, Witch Mountain is almost a given, because it's
sure.
It's hugely out there, and this one is a little bit more in its own classic lane, but it's just an honor. It's just an honor. Yeah.
Well, like I said, this is my first time seeing it, and I've definitely been enjoying it. One of the things is, I am upset that it was not on longer. I really am. So it's like, I'm almost at the end, and like I am getting upset. Like, there are only a couple of episodes left for me to watch, knowing what I know know now. And also now that, speaking to you, that there wasn't like really an end to the series, and that kind of upsets me as well. So,
yeah, it just gets cut off. It's like it's just one more episode and then boom, that's it. Nothing, no resolution of any kind. Yep.
I had enough heartbreak with shows that I loved as a kid getting upset, so maybe it's better that I didn't watch it back then. So yeah, but this was fun. I hope we answered all your fantastic journey questions. I got covered everything that you wanted to know. And but leave in the comments, and if we didn't cover something, we will try to answer it then. So Ike, thank you for taking the time today to do this. I know I've been looking forward to this, so and I know the fans have been looking forward to this, but this was fun.
Me too. Oh, I had a blast. I'm always enjoy sharing these stories. So I appreciate it. And I hope everybody had a good time.
Again, this has been Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen, along with Ike Eisenmann, and please subscribe. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for listening to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast.